and it's so common now. Everyone is getting so hysterical about things. You know who Christina Hoff Sommers is?
I love her.
She's great.
I love her.
She got literally shouted down off stage. They interrupted her speech. They put up signs. They wouldn't let her talk. They were calling her a fascist.
Boy, they sound really confident in their point of view, huh?
It's just so crazy.
Jeez.
But they
don't engage somebody in ideas. Shout them down because you're terrified.
Well, what they're doing also is they're getting on YouTube. So there's all these videos of them, being woke, #woke. Expressing their wokeness.
I've
and
heard that
interrupting
expression.
Her. Yeah, I know you have. Yeah, we were just talking about it.
Yeah,
it's a gross word.
I think it comes down to what I'm amazed. What I'm amazed at is I've talked to some of these far left ideologues, and and especially the people that would shout down Christina Sommers, who's such a reasoned voice and such an
She's
important
a
voice,
sweet woman too,
and smart and thought through.
You got to let her talk, and then if you disagree with her, have a conversation with her. They typically do a Q&A at the end of these speeches. That's just rude.
Try to beat her with your ideas.
And she's a feminist. Right. Her fucking podcast is called Factual Feminist.
That's right.
That's what her thing is. Her video series that she does.
No, she's an important voice.
Very nice person, man. She's not an anti-woman in any way, shape, or form. She's not the female
I
Uncle
love
Tom.
what she has to say. I've listened to her, and she wrote that book, The War on Boys. Mm-hmm. She's excellent.
She's excellent.
But I think a lot of this is like, one of the things I notice is that a lot of the left-wing ideologues like that, first of all, are fairly young. A lot of times they don't have a whole lot of experience in the world, or they are people who are like, if you just take the average journalist, and I've met a lot of them now and talked to a lot of them, the average journalist, even the average academic in colleges or in the people that are kind of controlling this conversation in certain aspects, they have just not really ever met anybody or worked with anybody that worked with their hands. That spends a lot of time, that had to be in the military, that they tend to be pretty cloistered. Even Sam Harris, by his own admission, said that in his Rolodex of 1,100 people, he only had one friend who smoked, and that was Christopher Hitchens. That's significant. It's significant when you are exposed to one element of society. And one of the advantages that I think a comic has when you travel so much is that you're around real people that work with their hands, people that do other things, that are in the military, people that are cops, people that are essentially a huge part of the fabric of this society, who are on the right and certainly on the left. And what you start to realize is that the world is way more complicated, is always the way it is, right? It's just way more complicated. People are way less easy to pigeonhole. Just because you supported Trump doesn't necessarily mean you're a right-winger across the board. Doesn't mean you're, about the patriarchy and stuff. And I find that a lot of young people, and I find a lot of people who are trying to be woke and stuff, and we do this as Americans. It's not just the left, it's also the right. We do this as Americans. We want to find a bad guy, and we want to put a label on that bad guy. We want a single variable answer. We want a single variable solution, right? So in other words, you are a racist. You are a sexist. You are a homophobe. So you got to be sanctioned, and we got to get rid of you. And if we can get rid of racism, as if racism has anything to do with it, actually, it's about tribalism, because people don't need a difference in skin color to hate each other. Have you heard of the Middle East or Africa or even this country? It's not about the melanin in your skin. It's just we're tribal. But we tend to want to find that one label. You're a racist. You're a homophobe. By the way, you're having a moment.
Most certainly racist.
Of course there
right?
are.
Yeah.
Of course there are.
You don't think racism is the problem that we're facing? You think it's more of a tribalism issue?
I think that if everybody was the same color, we'd have no problem joining groups and hating each other. No problem. Again,
that's
please see the Middle East.
That's for sure.
Look in Yuval Harari's
so
amazing book.
racism is just a symptom of that.
Yuval Harari's great book, Sapiens. Everybody should read it.
Read it.
Thank you.
On your recommendation.
The Dinka and the Nua in the Sudan, let's just take them. They look exactly the same. Just Google it. They look exactly the same.
Maybe you're just racist.
Right. They
it's
are.
Like saying all black people look exactly the same.
Well, they do look. They are basically, the only way to tell the difference is the tribal markings. But for the most part, they look exactly the same, very similar cultures, a herding culture. Dinka in the Dinka language means people. Nua in the Nua language means original people.
Whoa.
And they're sworn enemies. They fucking hate each other. Talk to Justin Wren about, talk to Justin Wren about how the pygmies are treated in the country right next door. They're brutally discriminated. They can't even go to hospitals or schools because they're short and they're magic, apparently. So go fuck yourself. It ain't about color. We don't need color to hate each other.
We definitely don't. We would find something. It would be neighborhoods or lines in the dirt or sports teams.
Fuck yes.
Yeah. We hate each other from neighboring high schools in the same town.
Yes, or we compete with each other.
Yes.
Maybe it's a good natured competition. There's nothing wrong with that either.
There's a natural need that we have to compete against each other and conquer each other, and that's because we used to do that exclusively.
Right.
That's how people moved. That's what this Viking show is all about. People coming into people's villages, fucking them up and taking all their gold, and just that's what people did forever.
Fuck yes. But here's the other thing. It's really taboo. This is so fucking taboo. Even to say this now.
What? Are you going to risk something?
So the narrative is those people aren't doing well. Let's just take any group of people.
Right.
They're not doing well.
Right.
Because there's only one answer to that. They've been put down. They've been oppressed, they've been suppressed.
Yes.
Sometimes that's true.
Right.
Nobody can tell me you don't understand the history of this country unless you study the black experience, at least a little bit, because that is such a huge part of the history of this country.
Sure.
And to be a black person in this country is not something I have no idea about, but it hasn't been easy, granted. Let's just take any ethnic group. If you were to ever, like Thomas Sowell, who's a black scholar, if you were ever to bring up the idea that maybe part of the problem in certain groups, okay, that aren't doing well, could be internal, could be of their own making, could be that there are certain aspects of that person's culture, whether they're Inuit, whether they're Mexican, whether they're black, or whether they're a hillbilly white guy. If you start talking about the fact that their culture and the way their beliefs, their practices could have something to do with why they're not getting ahead, you better be goddamn careful, because now you're blaming the victim.
But it is true that, well, you're not really necessarily blaming the victim, right? Because a victim in this case is a person who's a part of a culture, and we're all influenced by our environment.
Yeah.
And if you're involved in a culture that has very specific ways of behaving, and you're supposed to engage in these, and whether it's female genital mutilation that they do to children on a regular basis in some parts of the world, like, why do they do that? Well, they've just been doing that. That's what they've been doing. So they just keep doing that. Like, there's a lot of weird things that people just get sucked into, and then you don't even realize what you're doing.
Right.
You're 18, you're living that life, then it becomes a part of your pattern of behavior, and then you're 35, and everyone around you is behaving the same way, and the world's filled with violence, and no one can hit the pause button and go, hey, why are we macheteing each other, Hutsus and the Tutsis? Like, what are we doing? Like, no one's like, stop. Settle the fuck down. It's like you get locked up in the momentum of your past, of the past of your family, your ancestors, your community, your environment. Very few people have complete autonomy. So the idea that we're supposed to ask somebody to just figure it out or get their shit together or pull themselves up by their bootstraps, it's pretty preposterous.
Fuck yeah.
And it's usually coming from people that got a nice, juicy hand. Like, life gave you a couple of aces, and you got a 7 over there and a 2, and you try to figure out if you can get a flush.
Yeah.
Like, you got a good hand. You got lucky. So if you say you made it with a good hand, like, oh,
yeah,
congratulations, you won the pot. You got dealt 3 aces, you cunt.
Exactly.
You got lucky.
Exactly. I'll be the first to admit that.
You should. You should be the first.
I mean, some people are born with more advantage than others. Just a better family.
Well, just stop for a moment, and I don't want to get too this. I'm already too social justice warrior-y in this podcast, but this is one of the things that pisses me off is that I agree with so many of those twats on so many important issues, and then they get so crazy that they want to interrupt people like Christina Hoff Sommers and yell that she's a fascist, and there's just too much conflict that doesn't make any sense today.
Yeah, they're not reasonable.
Yeah.
How about that? They're not civil or reasonable. So I don't know where else to go. Like, if you're not going to be reasonable and you're going to decide that you're that right, that your side is rooted in truth and love, and my side's rooted in falsehood and evil.
And it's all these progressive issues are all. It's no one is ever like super into women's rights, but racist. Like they're all like,
Yeah.
there's a pattern of behavior that you're supposed to follow.
Yeah. Well,
you know,
you
like
said- you said it.
progressivism is like it's a really interesting predetermined pattern that everybody locks into because it support gay marriage. It's like all these things.
Well, you can, it's like if you're in favor, if you believe that global warming is caused by human beings,
You've
right?
got to be on the right. You're on the left.
You're on the left.
Yeah.
You know where you stand on gay marriage, on everything else. Like that's unfortunate. You can't be sort of responsive to evidence, right? So instead of being affiliated with a party or a candidate, be affiliated with the problem. What's the problem? We all agree we don't like spree shooters, right? That sucks.
Yes.
So there's got to be a way, if we could put our ideas together, create a little idea sex, there's got to be a way, right? There's got to be a way to
deal with this problem.
Well, can we talk about the fact that we all agree that the problem sucks? Now, you're saying we need more guns, and this other side's saying we need less guns. Is there something we can we at least start talking instead? Because, Brendan on the podcast said, can we agree there's a gun problem? The fucking number of hate emails we got.
Did you not want to give up those guns?
And Jim Jeffries was so funny because he goes, in his pod, did you hear that stand-up bit? He goes, here's the argument, because I like them, so fuck off. And it's like, that's good enough.
Yeah.
The Constitution says that guns, we have a right to bear arms so we can protect ourselves against a tyrannical government, right? I mean, that's what the Second Amendment. Well, he's like, the government has drones, right? They got tanks, they got cruise missiles. Your AR-15 ain't doing shit.
Here's another problem. People need to understand this. The government is us. Okay? Everybody that you just described is someone who works in the military. Everyone you just described is someone who's a soldier.
Yeah.
Those soldiers are civilians. They're the same people. They're people. They're us. We're not talking about some global elites that's going to take over. They're not taking over with us.
Right.
We are not going to take over ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not. This is not a stupid fucking country. Like the idea that somehow or another the military will start taking it. What we have to be careful is people that have extreme power and shit judgment.